What is faith? Quite a big question, that one, really. And as I was sitting at home thinking about what to speak about today, it was that suddenly came into my mind. Let's have a chat about faith. So what is it? In Hebrews, we're told, now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Well, that's all well and good. But if you're anything like me, you may have had some battles with that. Times when perhaps you question, what is faith all about? What do I truly believe? Now, there are lots of ways to deal with a question like that. And one of them can be to read, to explore the Bible, to see what God says in his word, and also to read other books that may help. Now, as you can imagine, a call to ministry entails a great deal of reading, not just when you head off to college, but to begin your studies, but an ongoing commitment to carry on and read and to study, which is why the Baptist Union say that as part of my working week, one of my days has to be a study day. Those are just some of my commentaries. That's some of my books on theology. I've got others as well hiding around the corner there, but I don't think you want a guided tour of my study. Some of what I read is very deep, but that's not always the case, as we're encouraged to read widely. There are many times when it's not the book that's the size and weight of a breeze block that really speaks to me, but something much smaller and simpler. It isn't always the case either that these books are written by eminent theologians or highly regarded, say, preachers. Although, as we were reminded at college, anyone can write a book. And so we need to bear that in mind when we choose what we're reading. Which brings me to this very deep theological book. A comedian's prayer book written by Frank Skinner. For anyone not familiar with the comedian Frank Skinner, and in particular the fact that in his own words he's a practicing Roman Catholic, that book could easily be dismissed as yet another comedian poking fun at religion. That would be a shame, as instead what this book offers is Frank's very real and honest take on what prayer looks like for him. It isn't a verbatim account of the conversations that he's had with God, but rather a series of topics that he's tackled under the umbrella of prayer. Things like the Trinity, heaven and hell, the Lord's Prayer. That's just to name a few of the topics. And along the way, he shares some of his beliefs, questions, fears and doubts on these and other areas of theology. And he presents them in a way that, as a reader, if you were sat alongside him as he prayed, you would find them interesting, challenging, and very, very frequently amusing. Now, one of the prayers that Frank shares in his book is a chat he has with God about faith. And in his prayer he asks, what do I believe? And then he explores what faith means to him. It's a breakfast service today, and not the place for a deep theological sermon on a subject so complex as faith. So instead, I thought it would be good to hear what Frank himself has to say. Sorry to disappoint you, but sadly, I couldn't invite him to be here in person. I did have a look at how you got in touch with him, but there seemed to be so many agents to get through, I gave up. But I wanted us to hear what he had to say. It's going to be a little bit different this morning, but I hope that, like me, you will find his thoughts helpful. Because from now on, these are his words about what he thinks about prayer, taken directly from this little book. Am I kneeling here because I believe in you, or because I may need to believe at you at some future date? If terrible tragedy befalls me, I may only have you to talk to. Turning to a stranger at such a time wouldn't seem right to me. So, and I'm speculating, I'm setting you up now. I'm building the shelter while the sun still shines. So when the storm comes, I will not suddenly have to learn belief from scratch. I'll have my history of rehearsed belief, an already existing structure, an only lightly trodden staircase up which I can scamper to the level of full conviction. So that's what I'm asking. Am I maintaining a receptacle, my prayer life, into which I can pour my forged in desperation faith when the time arises? Is this kneeling, is this prayer an act of insurance? What do I believe? I think that's the hardest question of all. I'm not sure I trust myself to answer it. I can accept at least the possibility that I'm investing in a faith that will kick in at some point in the future. I'm able to think that little of myself. My faith, like that of most sane people, has ebbed and flowed. Never left me, never set me aflame. I'm sure there's undulations to come. Not just for me, but for every believer. I'm thinking here of the afterlife. Surely everyone's faith will change drastically at some point after death. It will either dissolve into silent nothingness or be replaced by the breathtakingly real. I expect even the faith of the devout, unquestioning believers will be ramped up a few notches when they're actually in your presence. No one's faith could be of such certainty that when you finally rear up in front of them, they will merely nod and mutter, "Ah, there you are," and then start quizzing you about the Immaculate Conception. Even the strongest faith is still only faith. On a league of belief intensity, unchallengeable knowledge must rank higher than faith does. But even as I say that, those words are bitter on my lips. I think I taste my own error. It's as if my internal world faith suddenly becomes illuminated, like somebody switched all the lights on. It's suddenly vivid against the darkness. Maybe, it now seems to me, faith is more powerful than knowing. Faith isn't fueled by the mundanities of fact. It seems to have a tangible existence of its own, broadcasting 24/7 on a higher wavelength than believers regularly tune into. It's a way of life rather than opinion. It brings an intrinsic merit to the person of faith, a person who is moved beyond a cold reliance on proof. Faith is so recklessly counterintuitive, so challenging, so dynamically unmodern. I'm getting excited just about talking about it. I've noticed my prayer hands are making a slight clapping motion. When, or if, he said, once again illustrating the completeness of his own faith, we're actually confronted by you, when believing is replaced by knowing, will that knowing be stronger than an earthly faith? Or might it be a lesser thing, diminished by the passivity of merely observing a fact? If you ride across the sky into human history, flanked by dazzling angels, the whole world will believe, saint and sinner alike. Everyone will believe, but not everyone will have faith. Faith will be redundant. Faith, I realise, is a privilege, but a privilege with a sell-by date. I dance to the faith music now, but it won't play forever. It will be replaced by the louder, though I suspect more mainstream, music of manifested deity. I anticipate a change from minor to major. So when finally confronted by your undeniable amazingness, will we gain absolute and universal certainty and lose all the multi-layered manifestations of individual faith? Doubting Thomas, the only disciple who comes with his own adjective, seemed gutted to have the opportunity of faith taken away from him. We may get to prod the crucifixion wounds. Oh, how the atheists will cower and crumble. But then, well, we don't get to be special anymore. We just see and believe. No need for any input from us. Belief will cease to be interactive. You know, the more I talk about faith, the more I feel sure I have it. Otherwise, why would I bemoan the prospect of losing it, even of losing it to certainty? I knelt tonight to present my lack of faith. I tried to think dangerously, to question my own motivations. I feel prayer is not the place to give yourself the benefit of doubt. I'm here to confess, to offer myself up for inspection, to shine the light into my own dark corners. But sometimes you intervene. I honestly think you intervene. There's no voice, no sudden smell of incense, but somewhere in the swirl of me, you also become present. I spoke of doubt, but I'm not sure it was me who spoke of faith. I set out to undermine myself, but it feels now, as the prayer ends, like you just wouldn't let me. I feel a tear against my lash. I don't think it's cheek-bound, just a bit of spontaneous welling. If it's crying at all, it's certainly good crying. When it's bad crying, you'll be the first to know. Just give a moment to let those words perhaps resonate. Lord, we want to thank you for the gift of prayer. And that prayer is such an amazing space and time in which to share the things that are on our heart, to come to you with our questions, our doubts. And Lord, as we've looked at this, a few words from this little book today, which might seem a surprising choice in many ways, what it enables us to do is just to see how helpful honesty with you can be. Of course, this is one man's experience asking the questions that are on his heart. But they show us how important having conversations with you can be. How you speak to us in those times. And so, Lord, for each one of us, would you make us a people of prayer who don't just pray at a time like this, but set aside those times to be one-on-one with you. To bring all to you, to let you in, as Frank says, to the dark corners of our lives, and to share with you our hopes, our fears, our doubts, all those things. Because as we sang earlier, you are the God of everything. And you want us to allow you to be the God of everything in our lives. So Lord, help us to do just that, we pray.